She told me the baby was mine, and I believed her for years. Jim Jones then stormed out of the studio, straight into a lawyer's office, and got divorced. His eyes were crimson, hands were quivering, and his voice cracked. And without warning, just war, because what began as a reality TV romance suddenly devolved into a DNA catastrophe. We're talking about a paternity test that was so explosive that it destroyed contracts, blew up group conversations, and crushed hearts. In the court film that was leaked, Mama Jones threw furniture backstage, and Chrissy, oh, she didn't deny it, spoke 6 words that made the entire internet yell. "I did what I had to, excuse me, sis. You lied about a whole baby you." False timeframes, wedding specials, and a ride-or-die brand were all created while concealing a truth that might destroy Dipset. No, this isn't a scene of hip-hop and love anymore. Rather, it's a scandal that the devil himself wrote. It was meant to be just another day in court, a normal hearing over some old contract concerns with VH1. But Jim's team discovered something next that you won't believe she signed. Let's break it all down, because this mess is just getting started. There was nothing really serious, just paperwork and silence, until Jim Jones entered with a sealed package, a lawyer, and a "I'm done" expression. Chrissy was. She was already at the table, going through her phone as if it were any other Thursday, but her expression changed when she looked up and saw the packet in his hand. It included the results of a DNA test that would literally, not figuratively, light the entire courthouse on fire. Mama Jones had to be removed out after breaking a display screen and yelling, "I told y'all she was lying." So what was according to court insiders? There was a privately obtained paternity test in that envelope. It wasn't conducted by VH1 or a hospital, and Jim had gone off the grid. The test wasn't only for the child Chrissy claimed was theirs. It was also related to a second child, which Chrissy allegedly claimed Jim had died in the womb. The twist is that the second child is actually alive and breathing, and Jim isn't the father of either. For years, Chrissy recited the same fairy tale about how she and Jim were working things out and taking their time creating an off-camera future while she was reportedly paying a clinic staffer and faking DNA documents. Keeping up a two-family lie behind closed doors. The internet went viral soon after Chrissy's lie about a free Jim was exposed. Mama Jones was correct, and then the real bomb came when a voicemail from Chrissy to her former publicist appeared on, and this is word for word: "If the second test comes back negative, stall him and tell him the lab lost it or something," she writes in a gossip site. "I just need until the reunion airs." What you're doing, girl, is keeping a man from knowing the truth about a baby so you can get one more check out of a reunion special. This is brand-level sabotage, not emotional manipulation, but it doesn't stop the sources inside. According to Jim's legal team, they have discovered inconsistencies in the translation of chronological documentation. Chrissy reportedly altered birth certificates and repurposed old ultrasound film to persuade Jim that everything was authentic. "I always wondered why she never let me come to the appointments," remarked a friend of Jim's. But Chrissy was convincing, saying things like, "I want one thing that's just for me, or you." And Jim trusted her. Let's face it, he's not the easiest man to love, even if he'll admit that, but loyalty was the one thing he never feigned. So to learn this, Jim was devastated by the voicemail leaks, lab reports, and burner phone records. According to Courtroom reporters, Jim was unable to even look at Chrissy when the judge asked, "Mr. Jones, do you want to move forward with filing for legal separation based on this new evidence?" He simply nodded, and Chrissy didn't blink, cry, or even move in her seat. Instead, she crossed her legs, folded her arms, and uttered a single line. What does it even mean to survive a phony romance, reality show, or fantasy existence based on fabricated test results? That will always bother Jim. It was never about the baby. According to reports, Chrissy had a similar incident in 2011, a pregnancy concern that ultimately turned out to be a part of a broader dispute with production. So this wasn't even her first time executing a prank like this. You can't make this up. Mona needed something to anchor the finale when Jim was about to go, and she claimed to have known exactly when to drop the pregnancy card when the ratings dropped. Or perhaps because Chrissy supposedly did it for years. Sources claim that Jim was truly broken by the humiliation and sense of being used as a prop in someone else's legacy building process, not even by the DNA fraud that was written against him. The court are now partially available due to a screenshot that was leaked, revealed that Jim has asked for the immediate termination of any joint commercial endeavors and the total severance of any reality show-related intentional deception and reputational sabotage result in emotional damages. He's not just abandoning her, he's deleting her. As if this circus couldn't get any messier, a new character entered the scene. Yes, the former Cam's lawyer presented the judge with a sealed folder containing more film relevant to the paternity chronology just before the court recessed, proving that the sibling who everyone believed was no longer in the picture had never left. To put it simply, the video, which court sources claim was shot in 2018, depicts Chrissy and Cam together in Miami the same weekend she informed Jim she was in Sedona for a wellness retreat. Yes, a hotel room was. Jim didn't believe that the room and the receipt for 2 toothbrushes were a coincidence, and that's precisely where we start up in part 2. When Cam's video is shown to the court in the courtroom lights dropped a little as the projector came to life, and everyone watched as Chrissy's defense collapsed in real time when a witness came forward, since the DNA test was only the beginning. A grainy timestamp appeared on the screen as the judge leaned in and looked up from his bench. It was August 14, 2018, 10:42 p.m. Miami, and Chrissy was going down a hotel hallway wearing a gray sweatshirt with her head down and her phone pushed. She looked around, knocked twice on a door, and it opened. Cameron stood there, shirtless, smirking, and gasping, and suddenly the entire courtroom was captured on camera. The video shifted to an interior view because this was no longer only a coincidence, not a casual encounter or a long-standing acquaintance, but evidence of the kind that slams doors shut and destroys relationships. Footage shows Chrissy entering the room, removing her sweatshirt to reveal a tank top and sweatpants, and then leaning in and muttering something before the screen went silent, and there was no audio or graphic footage. But the damage had already been done, and Jim sat still. When the court asked him if he needed a recess, he waved it off, stone-faced and unblinking. Chrissy didn't flinch, but her lawyer got up right away and objected to the video, saying it wasn't proven. When your client told the court she was in Sedona on this particular date, the judge appeared irritated. That was all it took for there to be a contradiction and a falsehood on the record, and the court was just getting over in that video. Cam's attorney came up once more with the assurance that we're not done. He gave over another USB, this one with a voice memo. As long as Jim believes the kid is his, I have leverage and won't give it up. It was purportedly taken from Chrissy's old backup account, and the court approved it. It played Chrissy's voice calmly and coldly. You would hear a pin drop until I realized where I was standing with Cam. One woman in the back row covered her mouth, and Mama Jones, who was now back in the room with security holding her chair, began crying once more. But this time it wasn't the loud, irate sort. Was silently disturbed, Jim simply closed his eyes, and nobody moved, not even the court reporter. The judge then cleared his throat and said, "Proceed." "Oh," did the legal team for Cam pause for a moment. Bank records demonstrating that Chrissy wired $7,000 to a private OB-GYN in New Jersey 2 weeks prior to the reported miscarriage. Description: processing of confidential results. Translation: she paid to have a second test removed from the records. Jim's lawyer stepped up right once. "Your Honor, at this point, we would want to formally request a motion to look into identity concealment and prenatal fraud. Regarding the paternity claims, we also plan to present these findings to the district attorney's office." Chrissy didn't blink, but her face lost some of its color, making her appear vulnerable and human for the first time. The judge was cornered, nodded, and recorded that the evidence was accepted. Then, in a turn of events that nobody anticipated, the court called a surprise witness, a former Chrissy assistant named Witness C, who was frightened. She trembled when she mounted the stand, clutching her pocketbook as if it were her soul. I worked for Chrissy from 2017 to 2020, managing her social calendars and travel, and she hesitated, saying, "Personal messaging." CC glanced at Jim and then at Chrissy. "Yes," she replied. "She forced me to delete text messages." The judge questioned, "Did you witness any activity related to paternity fraud or public deception?" Chains before Jim arrived home, and when she forced me to send, and why did she want sent those pictures? She stated that she required promo-ready graphics for the upcoming season pitch when the judge inquired, and the assistant responded that she wanted to ensure the plot had empathy before the judge permitted the next inquiry, which was whether there had been any talk regarding Cameron. The assistant nodded, saying that she used to text him from a burner, and I had to choose one. Reunion Jim looked at her, not in anger but with despair, as if someone had just shown him a tone. Up for her when she said things like, "Jim is starting to show signs of suspicion," or "Await your response until after midnight." It seemed as though she was living two lives. The courtroom was quiet once more, but the internet was active outside, with bloggers' phones up and hashtags trending. Chrissy Burner's phone was charred double life. As if that weren't enough, the court played one final audio clip for the day while Chrissy just sat there, her eyes fastened to the floor without any tears or reaction, confirming that Chart Jim deserved better. It was Chrissy off camera during a mid-con talk, and it was retrieved via a Love and Hip Hop production staffer who claimed to have recorded it during a backstage moment in 2022. You don't need to know everything. A little mystery keeps things interesting. The judge paused the video halfway through, glanced over his spectacles, said nothing, and shook his head. Court was adjourned for the day, so Jim slowly stood up and turned to leave Mama. Men in check. He receives too much truth, and he departs. That's how they all are. Following Chrissy, Jones remained seated by himself, as if he had realized that the gang had finally caught up, but there was still one more twist to the mayhem. As reporters flocked outside, one of Jim's former business colleagues walked to the speaker and stated, "More emails, money trails, and a voicemail from a Love and Hip Hop executive are coming up," which shows that the pregnancy plot was proposed months before it was shot. What does that mean then? It implies that Chrissy not only lied to Jim, but also to America, and that every brand transaction, interview, and manufactured ring on the finger moment is now being re-examined under the microscope of wrath, with BH1 insiders already disclosing information. Even Mona Scott is allegedly under pressure to produce unedited film that could reveal the true story behind the entire pregnancy arc, and we haven't even reached part 3 yet. Production note stylists are coming forward. However, one more betrayal destroys any prospect of reconciliation, because Jim not only lost faith, but also court orders for Chrissy's financial accounts after hacked emails were made public. Chrissy arrived at court the following morning without a glam squad, a producer in her ear, an entourage whispering strategy, just her big shades and a silence that was heavier than anything she had ever worn. She had lost years of her life. She kept her head down, marched right through security to her seat, and waited when reporters called her name, since she already knew what was about to happen at precisely 9:03 a.m. Jim's legal team presented a new exhibit, a printed chain of internal emails between Chrissy and a VH1 executive who was fired, with the subject line dictating Jim's story, plot elements, time cues, and let's lock in the pregnancy scare for episode 3 that buys me time before I have to explain the Miami trip. Game over. Chrissy commented at the bottom of one thread, which caused the judge to raise an eyebrow. The judge said, "Manon, could you confirm that this is your communication?" Even her own counsel appeared shocked. After pausing, Chrissy nodded, "Yes, Your Honor, I sent that." The courtroom didn't have to gasp because everyone could already feel the change. Chrissy had completely changed from being a reality star to the antagonist in her own. Jim had not spoken at all during the series, and he sat quietly observing while periodically drinking water, as if the heartache had ended and this was just business. However, the final piece of evidence, an authenticated, time-stamped iCloud voice note from Chrissy dated a year ago, was wheeled in by a court technician as the final piece of evidence. Jim won't make it through if he ever learns about Cam. According to the recording she heard talking to someone on speaker. That's why I stated the baby was his. He needed to believe in something, and I needed him to stick around until the spinoff. When it became green lit, the room was completely silent except for the sound of Jim's attorney standing up and carefully pushing back his chair as he walked over to the bench. Your Honor, we are presenting this as conclusive proof. Endorsing deliberate emotional manipulation and corporate deception, then things really started to go wrong. Jim's team filed a formal application to freeze all joint accounts and assets until additional investigation was conducted, and the judge granted it. Next came the when it was announced that federal auditors would be reviewing Chrissy's business filings, charitable contributions, and digital transfers linked to her brand. The court clerk gave her lawyer a subpoena package that appeared thick enough to shatter a windshield, but Chrissy remained silent, didn't refute, didn't deflect, didn't cry, just appeared worn out like a woman who had finally realized the plot she had written was emailing her back with court orders, evidence files, and receipts that she was unable to alter. But it didn't end there because, outside the courts, Chrissy's entire public persona was being torn apart by the internet. Instagram sites who had backed her, like a pack of wolves, were changing the captions. Team Chrissy changed into Chrissy Played Us All, and talk was overflowing with side-by-side comparisons of situations where Chrissy pretended to cry over the pregnancy, but the actual timing revealed a different tale. The most outrageous portion was when a leaked VH1 internal chat revealed producers making jokes about pregnancy arcs. She promised this wasn't just betrayal. It was a production-wide performance that was coordinated for views driven by lies and paid for with emotional money that Jim never consented to spend. They gave us ratings and treated us like babies, which is the trade. Do you have anything to add before we conclude today's hearing? The judge asked, turning to Jim at last. He stood up, walked to the center of the room, took a deep breath, then said, "I just want peace. I want my time back, not retribution. I want the proper telling of my tale," and then he left without turning around or causing any commotion. Merely a man emerging from the remains of a life that never existed. But Chrissy wasn't finished as soon as the court session ended. The same person who was her publicist, the voicemail leaks that were discovered revealed on her behalf. The statement read, "Chrissy recognizes the harm done to her emotions, attempting to avoid watching television and concentrate on rebuilding in private."